Hey guys, welcome to Rachel Out Loud. Woohoo! Thanks so much for joining me for episode 3. Yes, we are finally at episode 3. I didn't think we would get here, to be honest, because we had an extended break. There was quite a break between episode 2 and episode 3. And so much was going on. And I'm definitely going to chalk it up to the holidays because the holiday prep was real. So much happened. My daughter got into college. She was also taking finals. It was finals week. And some of us were unwell all at the same time. So, we've been through a lot over the last few weeks, but we're finally in a good spot. I feel like it's slowed down a little bit because one, we're between Christmas and New Year's. And then two, I think we finally are in relax mode. So, in 2 hours, I'm taking a train to go and see my family. And I'm also getting ready for my game tonight. I know you see my jersey back there. Go Pack, go. I'm ready. So I think I'm finally just I've calmed down. I'm chill. So let's get right into episode 3. I know everybody's busy. I appreciate you taking time out to stop and listen. Thank you so much. So I think the last time we were talking about inherited imprints. And inherited imprints are my husband's going to kill me because I'm not perfectly centered and he's been like you have to be perfectly centered. Okay. Is that better? So, okay, the last time we spoke, we were talking about inherited imprints, the last episode we had. And inherited imprints are the things that shape us before we even know we're being shaped, right? So, the things that life is throwing out there that we had no control over, we didn't give consent to, like the society we're born into or the culture we're born into, the way our parents raise us, the way they parent, right? The generational traumas that have been passed down, the traumas that we wind up experiencing at no fault of our own as children. All of these things shape us and they show up in our life as adults. They show up in our lives as adults. We can see the patterns that we create that are basically echoes of the past and things that we've experienced in the past. So I think diving deeply into those things and understanding them is the first way we really begin to understand ourselves and then change the things that we want to change, right? Make the changes that we feel like we need to make. And so I think last time I shared a little bit about my own imprints. Um, we spoke about love and family being my first and foremost major experience as a child, which is wonderful. We talked about me growing up in a deeply religious home, about the birth of me questioning things and my curiosity about feeling unseen. We even touched on early childhood depression that I experienced. And there are so many other things that definitely shape me, but these things stand out the most, or they stand out the most. And then also I have had time over the last few weeks to kind of think about other things that also had a huge impact on me. So I've definitely figured out that nature and music and even my family jumping around from state to state, so moving all the time, had a huge impact on me. And it shows up today in my sense of security and safety. At first we would move around just within the city of New York. We jumped from house to house or apartment to apartment, whatever. And then it went from state to state to state. And that was never, I'm sure, the intention of my parents, but that's just what wound up happening. So of course that has a huge effect on me today. And it had a huge effect on me back then. And as I'm talking, I just want you to kind of start to think about your own story. And, it doesn't have to be anything heavy. It's just a conversation we're having. Just be curious about yourself. Ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself some questions. But let's jump right in, right? So I think that I didn't necessarily overlook nature. I think also we just didn't have time to cover it in the last episode. But nature definitely has been a huge part of my life, right? It definitely helps to regulate me and ground me almost immediately. And I live in New York City. It's loud, it's fast. I've lived in New York City for about 32 out of the 42 years I've been on this earth. Right? I was born here. My parents were born here. It's loud, it's noisy, it's busy, it's go, 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 go. It's concrete. But we do have pockets of nature that I frequent regularly, right? We have Central Park and Inwood Park and Morningside Park and Prospect Park. So I definitely use these things, these parks constantly, right? Central Park, especially. That's my go to park. It's right there. I've been going there for like almost 2 decades now, all the time. Like all the time, I'm in Central Park. And if I'm overwhelmed or I'm sad or I'm feeling stressed, like I just find myself there. If I need to just breathe, I'm always there. And sometimes I journal, sometimes I do absolutely nothing. I just sit there and stare at the trees, stare at the sky, lay on my back in the grass on a blanket, and I just stare and just take it all in, the water, the birds, the trees. And my nervous system just completely settles. Like it's almost instant. It's a beautiful thing. Um, and I think I really thought about it, and that didn't start in childhood. I mean, in adulthood for me. That started in childhood, right? So that started when I was a kid. I definitely, like I said, started out in the city, born in Queens, lived in the Bronx, Queens, Staten Island. So nature wasn't some obvious part of my childhood at first. We pretty much played in the street. Like, that's what it was. Like, you double dutch in the street, you're going to bounce a basketball around, you're doing that on the sidewalk or the street. I mean, concrete was normal. That was just what it was. But I told you, we moved a lot. So around 7 or 8, like I mentioned in the last episode, we moved to Maryland. And for the first time ever, I had access to a real yard. A real yard. A huge backyard. Swing set. Trees to climb. Fruit trees at that. A sandbox. Just a huge backyard. And I became an outdoor kid immediately. Like immediately. It was the best parts of my childhood were running and screaming in the backyard, right? Um so yeah, like we'd be running around all day climbing trees, catching lightning bugs at night, being forced to go inside when it finally got so dark that the bats were flying around and swooping over our heads. Like we had to be forced to go in there, to go inside. And even during the years I was homeschooled, like we would just rush through our work so we could get back outside. So even when school was in session, I was pretty much outside all day because my parents homeschooled me for like 4 years. Um, and I remember that was the first house in Maryland, and we moved to our second house in Maryland. And I remember like when we moved there, I was just looking out of the window at the backyard and I was horrified because the backyard looked absolutely horrible, especially compared to the house that we had just left, right? The ground was dry and cracked and dusty. It just looked so ugly to me. And I remember there was this shovel lying around in the backyard. I remember it was like propped up against, I don't know, the a gate or something. I don't know. And curiosity just like totally got the best of me. And I was like, I wonder what's under there. And so before I knew it, I was outside and I was just turning over the ground. And underneath that dry, dusty, cracked ground was this beautiful, dark, rich soil. And I started turning over the entire yard. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue. But I knew that I couldn't stop. So I just kept turning it over and turning it over and turning over just piece after piece. And while I was doing that, our neighbor, who I did not know at the time, Mrs. Erica, who always will hold a special place in my heart because she became like my friend. She leaned over the fence of our yard from her porch and was like, "Are you starting a garden?" And I was like, "No." And then I thought about it almost immediately. I was like, "Maybe. Why? Like, why? How do I do that?" And so I remember she disappeared and she went into her house and came back out with these two little cute little tomato seedlings. These two little tomato plants that she had planted from seeds. And she handed them to me over the fence and I was like, "Okay, I guess I'm starting a garden." Right? And so that was the beginning of everything for me. So yeah, I loved nature from the house before, but when I started this garden, it was over. Nature was everything. Miss Erica basically would give me all these tips. She'd give me seeds. She had a little garden of her own. She just would always talk to me about gardening. People from church started bringing me plants. And these were like really experienced older gardeners with massive, like competitive gardens that they would enter in contests and stuff. They would come over to like my parents' friends from work, everybody. So they come over to my house And they would give me advice. They'd help me like with the planning of where to plant what and what I should put here and there. You know what I mean? Like it was just this thing. I became this kid that people were kind of impressed by, it seemed. And it was the first time I had ever really owned something like this is my thing. And I remember people were so impressed because I was young, 11, 12 years old, something like that. Started this garden by myself. My parents were never into gardening, so they didn't really help me at all. It was all me. And it was impressive, right? It was this thing that I was responsible for. And it was beautiful because we had everything from cantaloupe and watermelon to peas and cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers. It was beautiful. And so I think that is when I really, really fell in love with nature, like on another level. And that routine that I had every day with my garden kind of became sacred to me. I'd wake up before sunrise, water my plants, talk to them. If you know, you know, all my plant moms out there. I talk to them. I'd weed my garden and then I'd go back inside, do all of my homeschool work, and I'd run right back outside to my garden. Like that was my life, right? And it gave me a reason to get out of bed when I was depressed because I mentioned last time, like around this age is when I first really remember being depressed. And it made me feel capable and proud and just alive. That garden was everything. That feeling never left. Like nature still does that for me today, whether it's my own plants that I plant or whether I'm enjoying someone else's plants that they planted. Nature really does that to me. It totally just relaxes my nervous system and it makes it so that I can breathe again. And so that is definitely an imprint worth mentioning. So I was like, I have to mention that because I totally did not mention that the last time. Okay, so that's nature, right? But then there's music. Music has always played a really big role in my life. When I was like 7 or 8, my dad bought me a clock radio. And mind you, let me preface it with this. I grew up in a very religious home. Secular music was not played ever. I think my dad got to experience the joys of Motown because he grew up in the 50s and 60s. But for some reason, by the time I came around, he was against it. So, like, my mom listened to worship music like Amy Grant and Don Moen, and my dad was all about gospel, Shirley Caesar and Yolanda Adams, and like, my dad was all about that gospel life. So, my dad bought me this clock radio, and I discovered music for myself. Like, I found the oldie station. I don't know why out of all the stations, and mind you, I had definitely listened to hip hop before as a kid because I grew up in New York and I had a Walkman whether I was supposed to or not, I definitely had listened to Wu Tang and everybody else just like from the radio. Um, but like when I found the oldies station, I was hooked. Like I was stunned by how incredible these people sounded. I didn't know you could sound like that. I didn't know that music could sound like that. And mind you, I'd probably heard these songs before like on TV or like in movies or something, but I never paid attention. So like even today music hits me so deeply. I remember even when I was pregnant with my daughter at one of the lowest points in my life when I was alone and pregnant and I had just broken up with her father, I could barely listen to music because anytime I would hear music, I would just break out bust out into tears. Like music, it hits me deeply. And it's helped me over the years get through so much. I mean, I've been through so many bad times where music has helped me get through it. And it kind of became like almost like shelter for me. Like if I have music, I'm all right. Okay. So we moved a lot. Growing up we moved all the time and not like on some let's have a of an adventure kind of thing. We moved because we had to. Right? My parents did the best job they could, but we always had to move. And yeah, I think that today that has such a huge impact on me and how I feel safe or how I feel secure and in where I'm at, just in general. Um, the wool was always being the carpet was always being pulled up from underneath my feet constantly. Like, can you imagine that? What that feels like? Some of you may have experienced that, but for me it was horrible. I was always the new girl. I was always the quiet girl because when I don't know people, I'm quiet, even though I'm so far from being quiet. Nobody ever got to know the real me. We lived here for 2 years, then here for 2 years, and here for it sucked, right? And so, like, I'll give you an example. One of the most drastic moves that we had, we lived in Pennsylvania at the time. And my parents had been talking about moving to Utah, but I kind of was rolling my eyes at it like I didn't really think it was going to happen because it's like Utah, how the hell we moving to Utah? Like, one, we don't know anybody in Utah. Two, we're black. Like, who lives in Utah? And three, we are from the East Coast. Like, how are we moving across the country to Utah? I remember just rolling my eyes as a kid thinking that's never going to happen. One day I'm coming home from school. I was in 10th grade. I was 15. And I remember this was such a great time in my life, right? Because I had really just blossomed. I was in the process of blossoming. I was really involved in everything at school. I was in so many clubs. Had been like, I was leading things. Like I had really come into my own. I had just had this really big, like, I don't even know if it was like a period of like a month or two where I was working very closely with the NAACP in our city. I had been on TV a few times. Like I was just in my element. I was in my element. I was an activist. I was really finding myself. I had a great group of friends. I was loving life in 10th grade. And one day I'm walking home from school. I get off the bus with my friends as per usual. And my parents are in the car with my sisters. And I remember I was about to go down the stairs to our apartment. We lived in a townhouse. And I was about to go down the stairs to our home. And because it was like down a hill. And all of a sudden, my parents like honk the horn and scream out the window, like, Rachel, Rachel, get in the car. And I was like, what? I was like, why? I was like, no, I'm going to go to the house. Where are you guys going? No, get in the car. And I remember as I walked closer to the car, I saw like all of our stuff, like tons of stuff in the car. And my sisters were in the car as well. And I was just like, what's happening? And so it turns out that we had gotten evicted during the day while I was at school. Wonderful. And of course, my parents don't tell me that because if you're like an 80s, 90s baby, you know your parents don't explain shit to you. They don't tell you anything, right? And I kind of even did that with my own daughter at first, like just not explaining stuff. And it's like, why? Like, why are you not explaining it? Like, I get sometimes kids are mad annoying. They'll be like, why? And you're like, yo, girl, give me a moment. I'm trying to figure this out for myself. I get that. But parents never explain things if you grew up in the 80s or 90s. It was adult business and you don't need to know. That sucked. Just to let y'all parents know now, that sucks. Don't do that to your kids. So basically, I had to figure it out on my own. I think we wound up going to my friend's house, my best friend at the time, who no longer went to my school. That year, she had moved and she went to a different school. But we were close, and we wound up going to her house and staying with her family for a week because our parents were cool. And I remember I probably found out from her talking about it, her and her brother talking about it. Basically, I found out that we had kind of been evicted. We've been kicked out of our apartment. And that's why my parents had to now find somewhere else to live. So that was horrible. Can you imagine how terrifying that is? I had no idea what was going to happen next. Turns out we stayed with them for like a week. And then my parents decided, yeah, we're going to Utah. And I was like, really? I don't want to move to Utah. And so yeah, we pack up our Caprice Classic. And mind you, this is after me and my best friend and her mom had begged my parents to let me stay there. It was like 6 weeks away from the end of school, maybe like 6, 7 weeks. Just let me stay and finish 10th grade. They'll ship me off to Utah when the school year is done. But my parents said no. So we get in this car, a Caprice Classic. There's 6 of us. So 3 in the front, 3 in the back. We have our cat and our bird with us. The bird was in a cage. The cat was running wild, trying to get at the bird the entire time we're in the car, and we start driving off to Utah. Yeah, from Pennsylvania. Like 3 days in the car, maybe 3.5 days, and we finally get to Cedar City. And mind you, the entire time we were in that car, the cat was chasing the bird. I think the bird got out of the car, out of the cage at one point, and the cat was chasing him all over the car while my dad was driving on the highway. We have to pull over at a rest stop. The cat runs out of the car as soon as one of my sisters opens the door. Like, why did you open the door? There's a loose cat in here. Runs out of the car behind the tree, like in the woods by the rest stop. We are there now for like an hour and change trying to find this cat. My youngest sister, who is the cat's guardian, not owner, but guardian, is boo-hooing her eyes out because her cat is now lost. It's crazy. We think the bird may be hurt because the bird I don't know, can't open both of his wings anymore. Like, it was insanity. It was absolute insanity. Finally, thank God, we find the cat, get the cat in the car, make sure the bird's okay, and we're off driving to Utah. We pull into Utah 3 days after we left Pennsylvania, and we pull into Salt Lake City. We pull into Salt Lake City, and we had to stay in a shelter. I'd never stayed in a shelter before. It was like a giant room with bunk beds. It was a family shelter, so men were in there as well. I remember my dad just like sat at the end of the bed in a chair, not the end of the bed, but in a chair underneath our bunk beds all night, just watching over us. It was scary as y'all. It was scary. And so that was a new experience for me. And I was like, yo, I just hope we find a place here. Like, I hope we can stay here. I don't want to keep driving. I don't want to keep searching for this magical land that my parents want to move to, Cedar City, for some reason. But no, in the morning, my parents were like, we're still going to drive to Cedar City. So we had to drive to Cedar City. It took another day. And we got there in the nighttime. I remember we had no place to go. So we're going around to different shelters. My dad finds a men's shelter, and I think maybe there they tell him there's a domestic violence shelter down the street for women and children. So we wind up staying there for a couple of months in the domestic violence shelter that's only for women and children. And my dad winds up staying in the men's shelter two blocks down the street from us, 2, 3 blocks, whatever. And it was really cool. It was great, but it was such a scary time in my life. Like I had no idea what to expect. It was scary. And at this point I'm realizing, oh, my parents really can't protect me. My parents can't keep me safe or keep a roof over my head. Like it was just such a scary time. And I think that all of that definitely, and mind you, of course, everything wound up being okay. A couple months down the line, my dad, he's working, we get an apartment and we stay there for 2.5 years. I graduate from high school in Cedar City, Utah, actually. Yeah. So it was just scary though, and I think that's just one example of one move. There were tons of other moves where we just have to pack up and go. And that definitely translates into my life now because I don't feel secure or safe at all. And I was so tired of being the new girl, y'all. Why do I always have to be the new girl? Tired of losing my things. I always had to start over. I always had all of my things taken from me because I never had time to pack. I was tired of losing people. I lost friends constantly. It just sucked. It meant that I had to always lose things. Small pieces of myself, I have to leave them behind. Always. So I learned early, don't get attached. Basically, your very home can disappear, can get pulled from underneath you. It sucked, right? And that, of course, isn't going to stay in childhood. Like, of course it didn't. How could it? Some of it's traumatic. So I definitely had to start like exploring like how does this stuff show up in my life today, right? That instability followed me definitely into adulthood. And I don't trust people at all. I don't even trust myself, but I trust myself more than anyone else. And so on the surface that sounds like confidence, but really that's just fear. And I feel like I don't manage if I personally don't manage everything, I feel like it'll fall apart. If I relax, everything is going to just go up in flames. So even in good moments, there's a voice that's always telling me, even when things are going great, it's always this voice. Oh, don't get too happy. Don't get too comfortable. Something bad is definitely coming. And that's not logical. That's just my memory. That's what's always happened to me. So that's what my body knows. That's what my nervous system is braced for, right? I'm always scanning, always bracing myself for impact, always preparing. And it looks like responsibility to people, but it's not. It's exhausting, is what it is. And when I let myself down, because of course I'm going to let myself down, I'm a human, it turns inward, right? I become super critical of myself. Depression and doubt hit. And it just is like a cycle that just keeps repeating, all because of what I experienced in childhood. This is the best part. I can't change my childhood. I can't do anything at all about it. I can't change the past. I can't undo the moves. I can't give younger little cute Rachel the stability that she needed or deserved. Um, but you can recognize the patterns. And that right there is agency. Because agency doesn't mean pretending that the past didn't happen, pretending that it didn't hurt. It means realizing that you're not powerless anymore. Like, you're saying this reaction makes sense, but it doesn't have to run my life anymore, right? It means basically you choosing to build safety in your life on purpose, you protecting your space on purpose, your peace on purpose, letting joy last a little bit longer, really allowing yourself to feel joy, right? Even when your body, even when your nervous system completely resists that. Agency is basically choosing how you respond now. Even when memory is screaming at you. Like, so let me leave you with a few questions, a few things to think about, because this is a short week. We'll be back next week with another episode where we can talk about agency imprint a little bit more. But ask yourself these questions if it pertains to you. When did you learn to be on guard, right? What makes you feel unsafe? What patterns show up in your relationships, at your job, in your body? Our bodies are screaming out to us all the time and we don't listen. Can you trace these things back to your childhood? Not to blame anyone, of course, but to understand, because understanding is really where choice begins. That's what I've definitely found out. Like, when you understand, you can start to choose differently. You can't fix the past. We all know that. We all recognize that. But you can recognize the pattern and you can build something new on top of it. Um, yeah. So, that's what I think. Anyway, again, these are always just my opinions. I'm just speaking what I know, what I've experienced, my life lessons. They may not be the same for you. Thank you for listening. Definitely, you can always reach out and let me know if you agree, disagree. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? Comment. I'm here. And I think we'll keep moving on in the next episode and we'll talk about agency imprint a little bit more, because that's where you really start to be able to like build a healthy life for yourself. With once you look back, you recognize the patterns, and now you have the knowledge. What can you do about that? That's really where you start asking yourself, what choices and changes can I make to better myself now and to better my life now, for my relationships, like my family and my friends, but for me, really. And how can I make sure that I, change the future and I don't repeat the past? So we'll talk about that next time. Thanks, guys, for joining me, and probably won't see you till then. So Happy New Year.